In this lesson, we're going to explore more the lights in Redshift, and we're going to talk about the area lights. So in the previous lesson, we set up the three basic lights plus the dome light for the environment. So the dome light, it's a generic lighting, also provides like generic shadows like ambient occlusion. And then the other lights, they usually project more defined shadows, or we can also manage a little bit the transparency and the softness of the shadows as we saw before. But using the area lights, we will have more options for managing the light and the shadows itself. So this was the previous setup. I brought in also a couch and a table, and I just copied the spotlight many times because in an interior we probably want to have more lights like spotlights from the ceiling, and the point light right here is just placed there somewhere on the wall, and then I use the infinite light for the sun. So I'm gonna undock here the lights panel, and you can also dock it somewhere in the Cinema 4D interface if you want. So in this case, I'm gonna dock it here on the top. So that's a way we can access more well, rapidly and faster all the different lights. So I'm gonna work with the area light mainly in the beginning of this lesson, and then we will continue also to use the other lights that we already know. And I want to talk about character visualization or product visualization. We have some characters and some products here in the asset browser in Cinema 4D we can use. So I'm going to close this scene, and instead of creating an interior, I want to create also a studio set. I want to use lighting studio. So I'm gonna go for this in this lesson 4, and I wanna use a character or a subject to test some of the effects of the lights that we're gonna see. So you can use some projects here in the asset browser, or you can use also your projects. You can create your characters using software like ZBrush, or you can use Blender and for sculpting and digital sculpting, digital painting. And if you want, there is a video course in ZBrush and also a video course dedicated to 3D character design in the channel. Or you can also use Modbox, and also you'll find this course in the channel as well. So if you don't want to create your sculpting, you can also get the character or the product. Well, if you want to do product design, industrial design, probably Rhino is better, or even Cinema 4D itself. It's good for creating like objects, industrial design, 3D modeling, polygonal modeling, and so on, or modeling with curves. And then you have also the possibility to download. And I'm gonna show you here a website where you can download many 3D models. I already talked about this website in many other video guides, so I'm just gonna go quick here, and I want to search for a sculpture in the specific, which is called the Laocoon, and it's in Rome in the Vatican Museum. So I want to pick one of these 3D models. I'm gonna go for the first one because it's a staff pick, so it's supposed to be better and better working. So it doesn't matter, just choose your sculpture that you want, that you prefer. I'm gonna go for this, and if I go in the model inspector here, I can see the wireframe. So this is probably done with photogrammetry, which is a technique that uses photographs to create 3D. So by taking a lot of pictures, you then bring them in a software, and then that software is going to reproduce the 3D model, and it's going to be looking usually like this with triangles. So it's going to be triangulated, not really good for modeling, but good enough for sculpting and even better for rendering. So we can check here the triangles, we can see all the information, and if you read, that's the author right there, and if you click here, you see more model information. So you can see the file types. Here we have OBJ, which is fine, but I usually go for GLTF, which is kind of compressed and usually lighter. You can see also the size of the various formats when you download. And you need to, by the way, create an account in Sketchfab when you want to download 3D models. And I suggest you do that because you find a lot of 3D models here in Sketchfab that you can use for your test, for your renderings. So let's go here and I'm gonna import the model. So I'm gonna go in the folder here that I've already extracted. You'll find a zip file. When you download it, you need to extract it, and then inside the folder that you extract, you should find a 3D object, which is going to be called the scene. And you can see this is GLTF format, the one I downloaded. So I'm going to go for this format. And you have also a textures folder, but we're not going to talk about materials in this video, just lighting. So here we can keep everything as it is. Well, actually, you may want to take off the cameras because we don't really need cameras at the moment. We just need the geometry, the material. This is not an animated model, so we don't need animation as well. And there you go. So this is the 3D model. And if you wait, also the texture will appear because GLTF also is going to provide the texture for you. And you can start right away to use this 3D model. As you can see, you don't need to scale it apparently, but we need to check on the size. Now let's run a quick IPR render to see what's going to happen. Let's put real time and let's use here in the undersampling, let's go for 4. So the maximum, and let's say about 50 or 75% for the resolution, the overall quality. Now give it some few seconds because it needs to calculate the shaders and all the rest of the thing here. So be patient and eventually it's going to look better. If it doesn't look better, don't worry because we need to work here with the lighting, with the materials and so on. Let's add a dome light. Let's add a plain white dome light and there you go, nice looking, definitely better. Now it's processing the textures, so we may want to increase a little bit the quality here. And also let's increase the resolution. Let's see what's going to happen. Still processing the textures. So again, be patient, wait until everything is loaded, but we can already see the 3D model is looking good. Well, it's not so detailed, but it's fine. We don't need to, take care of the geometry here. We just need to for the lighting, but we can see already the textures and it's already looking good. The material also has been now definitely uploaded and it's visible, so we can use the material, or we can also get rid of the material. We don't care about the material right now, but this is just to show you how quick it is and how easy it is to get models from the web. And again, if you're interested also in photogrammetry, you can use many different software that do this. You need a scanner, or sometimes just the smartphone is fine, or you need like a camera that does it. And you have many different types of photogrammetry. You have exterior, you have interiors, you have single objects, and so on. So you can use also Substance 3D. This is one of the tools you can use. In the Substance 3D package, you'll find the Substance Sampler, which is good for creating materials and creating 3D objects from pictures. And you'll see other videos in the Substance 3D course. Now here, I also want to represent a photographic studio. So I want to create like a little set for my scene here of this lesson. And you can take inspiration from the web again. So you can see that in the studios, we usually have this like background, like a backplate. And then we have different types of lights for different purposes. So you have bigger lights that usually create diffuse lighting and diffuse shadows. And you have like spotlights or more concentrated light that create sharp shadows and sharp lighting to enhance the details of your subject. And usually there is a combination of these different types of lights in a studio, so you can get different effects. You can simulate all these effects just using the area lights, but you can also use the spotlight, the point light in REDSHIFT if you want. So you can use a combination. You can use just the same one for all the lights in the studio. It's up to you. Just gonna give you some demonstration here of how you can use it, and then you can choose how to use it yourself. Now let's go back in here, and now we have added a area light here. I've added an area light, and I don't see anything anymore. So what I'm gonna do is increase the size of this light. And if it's not enough, let me just increase also here from the top view. it's better to work in the 4 views. So now I've getting rid of the dome light, so everything is dark, and now we're only lighting the scene with this area light, which is pretty big at the moment. We can make it even bigger, and we can start to see something. Well, that's not good enough at the moment, so we need to understand what's going on. Now, sometimes the scene is too big or too small. Try to avoid that, because when you're gonna create your lights and give them a size and an intensity, you want to have a well resized scene. So I'm going to create here a mesh in Cinema 4D. I'm going to create a cube, and you can see that this cube, if I make this a little bit bigger, you can see the size on the properties, and this is a pretty big cube already, is as big as a room. So probably our sculpture here is too big. So make sure you have like a correct size. So I'm gonna set up here the size of a room. I'm gonna say that this is going to be around like 10 meters, 20 meters. And you can see if I select the sculpture here, is way too big, because that cube right now is 2 meters high. So this sculpture is probably like 20 meters or something. So we need to decrease the size. Now be careful not to stretch or make this distorted. You want to scale in 3 dimensions, so you don't need to click on the little colored gizmos there. You just want to click outside and just scale and scale. Continue to click and drag your mouse. And again, all this stuff is explained in the Cinema 4D video course if you find troubles with this really simple operation. So I'm gonna place it there inside my cube, and I'm gonna make the cube a little bit bigger so that it will it's gonna be like a room, a closed room where we can work. And there you go. So I'm gonna place that and make sure that it's positioned on the floor. And let's type here on the size, let's type 500, which means 5 meters, 500 centimeters, times, well, we can do like 20 meters, so 2000, or we can do 10 meters, depending on the size of the room that you want to create. So just, doesn't need to be too big. Make sure that is enough big that the statue will go inside there. And then I'm gonna try to position that near a wall of this room. And I'm gonna get inside with the camera. So I'm gonna zoom in until I am inside, and of course everything is dark. It's also dark because my area light now it's stayed outside. So I'm gonna make this smaller, and I wanna bring him in. And as soon as I bring the light in, I can start to see again my sculpture here. And it's creating the render again. So let's try to make this a little bit smaller. And now it's looking better. Now, usually REDSHIFT creates these really shiny materials automatically. So we will fix the materials later, and just want to concentrate here on the lighting. So I'm gonna move the background there. So we can see now the wall and the pavement. Now, if we go inside the box parameters, we can also increase the fillet radius to 20, and also the fillet resolution or subdivision to see like the back of this room a little bit better. Again, to simulate kind of a studio set, we're going to increase a little bit the fillet radius, and we can see now a little bit better. Now, of course, one light it's usually not enough. You need a system of lights to have a good result. But let's decrease this, and we can see already a little bit better. We can see also the light being reflected on the object, and it's on the floor. So I'm gonna push it up a little bit more, and now it's coming from the top, and it's looking already interesting, but we can fix it even more. So you can position the area light. Area light is not like an infinite light, so it's important where you position it, how you direction it, so how you rotate it, and so on. So it's just like the point light, and the more like the spotlight than the point light. So I want to move it, and here with the view I can frame my geometry, so I can go near quickly, and I can position this. Now it's looking like a really dark material with really high glossiness at this moment. Now you can make the area light really thin in vertical. You can make it thin in horizontal. You can see how the size affects the shadows. Right now the shadows are pretty blurred, but the more I increase the size, the more the shadows tend to get blurred. So if I decrease the size and increase the exposure and the intensity, I can have more energy from that light, even though it's smaller. So changing the size will affect the intensity at this moment. Now I'm going to go to the materials here and try to convert the material, because it's not looking as it was looking at the beginning for some reason. So maybe it just converted it automatically, or something happened to this material and turned really black. So I'm just gonna, delete the material. We don't really care about the material right now. We just don't want to focus on the lighting. So I'm just gonna delete the material. That's it. I'm gonna use the standard material, and let's focus on the lighting, one thing at a time. So let's go back to the area light here, and let's go here and I want to make this even smaller. So the more I make this smaller, and the less intensity I have. But look at the shadows. The shadows are getting more and more sharp. So this is one way you can change the shadow softness. You can also change the shape of an area light. So you can use a rectangle, you can use a disc, you can use a sphere, you can use a cylinder. You can adjust there the size using the little yellow dots. You can use again, cylinder that is pretty bright because it's pretty long, it's pretty big. So try always to make it, not too big. And you can see it changes radically the way that the shadows are projected. So changing the shape is really important when you're working with the area light, because it's going to affect the intensity, it's going to affect the shadows. And we're going to continue to talk about shapes in another video. Let's keep it with the rectangle. And now I want to adjust the size. Also here, I can adjust the size. The bigger it is, you see the shadows get softer and softer. The smaller it is, and the shadows will get sharper and sharper. But also I cannot see it because this is too small. So I need to increase that just a little bit. And then perhaps I need to increase the intensity and the exposure. Now there is another really important parameter, which is the spread. Now the spread is, changing the direction of the area. So when you have a high spread, the light will go everywhere. Now let's increase the intensity here. You see I've decreased the size. So when I increase the intensity, and now you see really sharp shadows. So the spread is also going to affect the shadows, but not so much as the size. So the size is really important for the shadows, as well as the softness of the shadows. So you can see now we have 15 centimeters, we have a really high intensity, we can see really sharp shadows. So if you want them sharper and sharper, you need to decrease the size, increase the intensity. So the spread, you can see, is something a little bit different. It's acting like a spotlight. It's acting like when we change the cone size of the spotlight. If we make the spread to 0, we have a really concentrated beam of light, kind of a laser, kind of a really strong infinite light coming from an aperture, an opening from like a window or something like that. If we start to increase it, the light is going to spread more and more into every direction. So it's going to be less concentrated, more diffuse. But as you can see, it doesn't affect the shadows too much. It's more about the spread of the photons, of the light's rays in the scene. And it creates a really nice effect, as you can see. It kind of a spotlight effect again. And so we can adjust the size, we can adjust the intensity, the exposure, and the spread, and we can have different settings. Now, if you activate normalize intensity, well, if you use this, the size will not affect the intensity anymore. So it's kind of separating the spread. It's always the same, but now we cannot see, because if we increase the spread, we decrease the concentration of the light. But if we change, let's change here the exposure a little bit. Let's increase the exposure. Let's adjust the intensity. We need more. So let's type like 500. So you see that now if I change the size, it doesn't change the intensity. So if you want to like unlock the intensity from the size, you need to turn on the normalize intensity. So those two are not going to be linked anymore. So you can work separately with the intensity, with the size, and of course also with the shadows and the shadow softness. Now remember that also a sharp light will also affect the details of your character, of your object, making them more visible, sharper. If you use a diffuse light, a really spread out light, you're gonna lose some of the details. You're gonna have more ambient light, kind of a, the difference between a dome light and an infinite light. So again, just move forward, play around with the different settings. These are the most important settings when working with the area lights. And then of course you have shadows, and you can also change anytime the type of light from here. So you can make this as a point, you can make this as a spotlight, you can make this infinite, and now it's not visible anymore. And you can make, whatever you want. You can make it, you can change it anytime, but you need to adjust it. So I see something here, not too much, but I see something with this infinite line. It's kind of coming on from outside in a way. So probably it's passing through a little bit because we don't have total opaque shadows. And I kind of like this effect. It looks like a backlight. So I'm gonna keep it, and I wanna see here what happens if there you go. I wanna make a copy of this. So I'm gonna use one as an area light, like there you go, like before. And I wanna keep also the other one as a kind of a backlight, the one that I changed into an infinite light. So I'm gonna type here infinite. So one is gonna be infinite light, the other one is going to be, and you can see if I turn on and off, we can immediately see, thanks to real-time render, what happens if I change the color, if I change the intensity, etc., etc. So two lights is better than one, but even better is to try to create different settings. Sometimes you have two lights, sometimes you have one light in studios and also in movies and TV series. Sometimes you have, more complex system of lighting. Your job is to try to simulate what happens in reality in the real studios in 3D. So you can do that again by mixing and matching and experimenting with different colors, different position, different heights, and etc., etc. Now, the base of all this is the three-point lighting system, which is a really basic system based on three main lights. So the first one, the most important, will be the key light, which is the one that is going to create also shadows on the other side. And then you have the fill light, which is going to affect those shadows, making them like less dark. So it's kind of, calibrating the lighting. And then you have a backlight that is used to underline the back or create a rim effect on the edge of your character or your product, wherever you're working with. So that's a representation there. You have key light from the left here, and then a fill light from the right, and then a red light from the back. You have many different examples that you can find on the web on how you can recreate this effect. And I think this is really good for 3D because it's, even if you change the colors also a little bit, it's going to create nice 3D effects. So you can radically change the colors here to have, something that looks more 3D in a way. So now we have a dark red infinite light on the back, and we have a strong front light, key light on the front. Now I want to move this key light a little bit on the left. I want to change the effect a little bit. So also I'll need to rotate this, or perhaps I can use a spotlight for this. So you can now mix the various lights that you already know. I'm going to change here the coordinate system into world. I'm going to point this spotlight onto my sculpture. There you go. And this is really important to define which is the most visible part of your subject. So I'm going to increase the intensity as well. And I'm going to call this spot, or even better, you can call it like the key spot, because that's the key light. And let's make it a little bit more intense. Now, again, we don't care about the resolution, the material, or anything. We're just focusing on the lighting. And perhaps I can adjust the cone angle, can adjust the fall off, and I can adjust the type of fall off here. And you can see the shadows also, they're being projected. So if I move these around, I'm going to change the projection of those shadows. Maybe I want this to go more from a side. You can also click on this little yellow dot and make it more intense. You can adjust the intensity directly from the 3D view, and I can rotate it maybe a little bit more, and try to find the effect you're looking for. That's the bottom line. And I think this is good for what I want to do. So now I proceed with the fill light, which is going to be here on the other side. Let's create an area light. Area light are pretty good for fill light because they are not sharp, usually, if they are big. So they can be used as diffuse light, less concentrated, unless we make it really, really small. So we can see the shadow on the other side right now because this is really strong. But if we start to decrease this, so let's call the key light, the spotlight is going to be our key light, and this other area is going to be a fill light, and we need to decrease. We can change the color also, so we can distinguish that from, let's make it red again. There you go. And of course we need to decrease the intensity because that's just going to work on the shadows on the other side of the key light like this. So they need to be balanced. So you decide that balance, how strong you want to be the key light to be, and the fill light, and so on. So it's just a matter of adjusting and see which thing works the best for you. I think I want to make this a little bit bigger like this, so you can adjust it. Also, you can move it up, you can move it down. It's going to change the effect. Now you can see that the shadows from this light are not really visible. If I change the spread, I can make this more concentrated, and I can now see the shadow effect. If I put this to 0, that's gonna again look like a window, kind of a light coming from a window or something, from a really narrow space, pretty defined, pretty concentrated, and it's also a nice looking effect. So try to experiment, and eventually you'll find the correct balance. So I like to see some shadows there from the fill light, but not too much. And maybe I want to make this fill light less intense, or I can adjust the exposure a little bit. So I think that working with a good contrast between light and shadow is, or like darkness, it's the good way to go. Now let's add a point light. So we have this infinite light that can act as a little bit as a backlight, but it's not really creating a rim effect. So let me also try to change the color of that. So we have different colors, different color combination, and see if we can create something more interesting with that infinite light from the back. But you can see it's not really showing up. So let's use a point light. And let's bring this point light to the back. That's one way we can do this. Or you can put it from a side if you're using an area light. So you can see that it's there, but we don't really understand how this is going to work here. So one good practice is to work with one light at a time. So let's make this red first, so maybe we can see this a little bit better. And yeah, we cannot really see it, so increase the intensity. There you go. Now we can see it on the wall, but we don't really understand how it's working on the subject. So a good practice is to turn off all the other lights, and let's zoom in a little bit to see better what you see. The rim now is starting to show up. So if I turn off everything else, we can concentrate more on that particular light. So I can push it here on the back or move it around and see. There you go. What we want to have is that effect. We want to see the profile of the character showing up. And so just move it up and down, move it from the side to the back until you have an interesting effect. And you can also copy and paste this, Control C, Control V, because you can double this up. You can start with the 3-point lighting, and then you can increase the number of lights until you're satisfied with the effect. That's the base, but you can build on top of that. Now let's turn everything on again, and let's see the final results. And we can play turning on and off all the various lights and see which combination is the best. So this will be all for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed. Please join the channel to support us and subscribe to stay updated. See you in the next lesson.